From the Smart Force Student Summit, powered by IMT, here at the International Manufacturing Technology Show. This is the Tech Ed Podcast. I am your host, Matt Kirkner. We are streaming live all week on YouTube with a whole host of people doing really, really fascinating things in the world of industry, in the world of education, in the world of automation, technology, and so on. Our next guest is absolutely no exception. Really looking forward to the conversation that we're about to have with Mr. John Zappa. John is the Senior Project Manager of RoboticsCareerorg and the ARM Institute. We're going to learn all about what are the manufacturing institutes, what are the great career opportunities in the world of automation, in the world of manufacturing and advanced manufacturing. John, so great to have you with us.
Great to be here, Matt.
So let's start right here with a question for our listeners who may not be completely familiar with what the Manufacturing USA Institutes are. First of all, we're huge fans of them at the Tech Ed Podcast, but want to get an overview of that, and then also tell us about the work mission and the vision of the ARM Institute as well. But start with the Manufacturing USA Institutes. What are they?
Sure thing. So the U.S. government is in a response to helping U.S. manufacturers become more competitive, established the Manufacturing Institutes. There are 16 of them all over the country. Each focuses on a different specialty, and our mission ultimately is help U.S. Manufacturers become more competitive, if you will. Our particular institute, the Advanced Robotics for Manufacturing Institute, that's a mouthful, we go by ARM Institute, is and a little double entendre there, the ARM.
Yep.
But the idea is that we help U.S. manufacturers through the lens two ways through our mission. One is, how do you utilize robotics technology in a manufacturing process? But also, how do you build a workforce that can help harness and leverage that technology? So it's great that what the technology can do, but how do you have a workforce that's equipped to help you take advantage of most of what it can offer?
So tell us a little bit about the types of companies you're engaging with. Are they primarily all manufacturing companies? Are they all on the cutting edge of manufacturing? Are they folks that are just trying to figure out their way through the whole idea of automation and how we reach a more productive and more quality-driven manufacturing process? Who are the kinds of companies you're partnering with?
Sure, that's a great question. So we're consortium-based, so we have a little over 350 members. That includes manufacturers of all sizes, from the largest, the Lockheeds, to mid-tier, smaller regional manufacturers. We also work with workforce development agencies, and then finally educators as well. So our consortium is a nice mix and a crossover, because we have found that when you work at the intersection of what each of those stakeholders has, you can get really great outcomes.
Yeah, no question. And it is interesting as we look at things like workforce, we look at public policy, we look at the challenges facing industrial employers. It sounds like you've created a great consortium of those kinds of organizations. What does the engagement look like? So I'm a small to mid-sized business, even a large business, and I want to benefit from all the great things that the ARM Institute is doing. What does that feel like for me?
So a couple different ways. One is through the technology projects that project calls that we do. So if you're interested in utilizing robotics technology and you want to integrate it into your environment, we sponsor demonstration projects. We've done dozens of these where, how to use robotics to help in a unique sanding application for a manufacturing process, or certainly during COVID, how to erect a portable hospital structure, right, and how to maintain that. And so those are ways folks can collaborate together. Maybe a university, regional manufacturer, a large manufacturer collaborates together, puts a proposal in and says, we'd like to learn how to do this, and ARM will sponsor that. That's one way in terms of the technology side. On the workforce development side, though, we have a rich set of ways for people to engage as well. We're looking for manufacturers to help us understand what skills and competencies do you need to develop, and that informs the whole suite of services that we're offering there.
Makes a lot of sense. So let's start with that first model where you're talking about a company actually making a proposal to the ARM Institute. So they're coming up with an idea, an application. I like the way that you put that, because when we work with industrial employers, it's the easy applications of, I just need to pick this part up and put it somewhere else. I'm doing 500,000 of those a day, and it's repeatable and it happens over and over and over again. Pretty easy business case for automation. When it comes into something like sanding, for example, where you've got unique parts and you've got unique applications and unique ways that parts are being presented to robots, a lot more complicated. So it sounds a little bit like, if I am a company, if I'm an organization that has a challenge like that, I can make a proposal to the Arm Institute and then look at funding and collaboration toward that end?
Yeah, typically our calls for proposal are driven by, let's say, an area that's important to Department of Defense because they are a principal funder of Arm Institute. By no means the only funder, but a principal funder. So they have designated, if you will, areas of research that they are important as they're advancing their own agenda. And so they may say to us, hey, we are looking for proposals in the area of hypersonics, for instance, or in the area, like I talked about with during COVID, portable hospital structures. So we'll put a project call out there and then solicit our members to say, do you want to collaborate on this particular area? And the intellectual property that is developed becomes available to all the members. And so it's a way to kind of foster not straight research, but how do you get from this, hey, we've got an idea and we want to start to get it to something that's a prototype that's out there that demonstrates how the technology can actually be deployed. And that's where we really fit on that side of what ARM does.
So it's really more about applied innovation and maybe applied research with quotes around it. It's figuring out what are those applications in the world of automation.
Exactly.
So let's talk about the second part of that original answer. You talked about working with industrial employers to understand the competencies that are important in this crazy world of changing technology, automation advancing so quickly. We're here at the International Manufacturing Technology Show, both of us learning about all these advancements in technology, and it just really blows my mind. It's the first time in 4 years now that we've all been here in person at what many people don't realize is the largest manufacturing show in the Western Hemisphere, right? So we're learning about all these new technologies, but with that brings a whole host of new competencies that people need to understand when industrial employers are hiring industrial talent, hiring advanced manufacturing talent. So how does the ARM Institute augment understanding what those needs are and then putting that to good, positive work?
Great question. We looked at the situation as a national institute and said, how could we, really play a role and have an impact here? And instead of going out and creating another training program, there's a lot of quality education and training programs in robotics. We decided, let's look at how can we help connect people to the programs that are right for them. Mm-hmm. And how do we do that? Well, we met with our consortium members through a whole process to try to understand, you folks are the ones that are hiring in these particular roles, whether they're entry-level roles as a robotics technician or maybe an advanced robotics integrator role. You know what skills you need. Help us understand that. And so we went through a process and defined a set of 26 competencies and a career pathway with each of those.
Awesome.
Right? So whether you're entry-level, mid-tier, or a more advanced role. And then we said, oh, that's great. Now we know what employers are looking for.
Right.
How do we operationalize this
sure.
and put it into something people can actually use, right? And so we launched a service called RoboticsCareerorg.
Okay.
And the idea behind that is we said, there's 15,000 programs out there in the United States. How do these programs relate to these skills employers need? And can we look at each of these programs, tag each one of them, and say, if you take this class, at Fox Valley Technical College up in Wisconsin.
We were just talking about it, yeah.
Exactly. These are the skills you're going to learn, and these are the career pathways it's going to prepare you for. So we've mapped all that and made that a searchable process. And here at the show, we're announcing a service where we'll actually guide you. You give us a couple, help us understand as a prospective student what are some skills you want to develop, and we'll make recommendations for you based on your geography, what skills you want to learn, and how to connect to a program that's right for you.
It makes so much sense. And as we talk with young people about selecting a career pathway, about figuring out what direction they want to go in, I'm a huge advocate almost for using what we use in manufacturing, and I spent most of my career in the world of manufacturing, a lean process. In other words, how do we drive waste out of that process? And we can spend a lot of time, and we do in this country and around the globe, spinning our wheels trying to figure out what it is that people want to do because they're not taking the time on the front end and saying, what do I love to do? What inspires me? What's interesting to me? And your career pathway shouldn't be about, what did my next door neighbor do, or my dad's an accountant, I need to be an accountant, or what have you. It really should be about understanding your unique personality, understanding those personality traits, and then putting that to work and saying, all right, here's a career pathway that makes sense to me. It sounds a little bit like that platform is doing exactly that.
Matt, you should work for the ARM Institute. You're all over it. So, yeah, exactly. I've had the opportunity to meet some students here on the show floor and their teachers and professors. And it's fascinating because everybody's coming at this from, wherever you are, right? So whether you're looking for, maybe I went to a STEM high school and I want to go to a degree-based program and I'm interested in becoming someone who's a robotics integrator and figure out where I deploy robotics in an automation setting, great. We've got programs that we can connect you to, programs are out that we can connect you to. Maybe you're saying, hey, look, I went to more of a vocational track and I'm interested in what can a robotics technician do? What skills do I need for that? And what are the training programs out there, that can help me, whether it's at a community college, a technical college, or is there an apprenticeship that I can pursue? From our perspective, we're going to meet that person where they are and then help connect them to a path that makes the most sense for them.
And all of those different pathways, I mean, first of all, it makes so much sense for young people to understand what those pathways are, what those opportunities are. I think this is now, we're broadcasting live all week from IMTS, and I think this is interview number 3 or 4, maybe 5. And we've 2 or 3 times already this morning talked about the whole idea that it's an and, not an or. You don't necessarily, your career choice when you're in high school, coming out of high school, it's not a life sentence, right? And we can come right out of high school, go direct to workforce. We can, to your point, go to a great technical or community college, be a technician. Maybe we're on an engineering pathway. And just because we choose one of those doesn't necessarily exclude us from the other 2, right?
That's absolutely correct. The beauty of it is the way we've kind of approached this. We're going to equip you with the tools and information so you're just informed on what are the different pathways available if you want to pursue a different pathway. Or even if you're someone that's already got some experience in manufacturing and you want to upskill, that's fine. The way we look at it is we want to connect you to training that's appropriate for you. Like I said, whether it's an advanced degree, whether it's more vocational oriented, or whether it's more on-the-job training. 15,000 programs is a lot of waterfront across the U.S., right?
Absolutely.
So, sharing what's important to you or exploring what's important to you, and then we can make recommendations, and you want to change those recommendations, no problem at all. Switch what you're looking for.
So 26 different competency areas that you came up with from this research. Just talk about that a little bit. Are there any things, I guess, first of all, that maybe surprised you that people wouldn't have expected to be in that list of 26, and what else is in there?
Yeah, so that's great. So I would say there's entry-level roles that are no surprise. These are for folks that are working at let's say, an individual robotics workstation. So electromechanical skill sets, troubleshooting skill sets, maybe basic robot programming skill sets. Even how do I deal with a PLC controller, right? There's some fundamental things that are important to know. Safety, obviously.
Of course.
But then when you start looking at some of the other ones, let's say, how does a robot fit into my environment? You're starting to look at things like big data or simulation or systems design. Those are part of that 26 skill sets too, right? And again, the thing that was interesting about it is that there's a large variety of skills that are necessary, but they do group themselves into whether it's an individual workstation, how does that workstation relate with the rest of the stuff, or how do I even bring automation into my factory?
I did a project while we're talking about technical colleges in Wisconsin. Western Technical College was one that we've done quite a bit of work with, and we did a project a couple years ago that looked like as we're advancing into the world of IoT, as we're Industry 4.0, all these different worlds. It's amazing how much commonality there is, not just on the manufacturing side, but across every sector of the economy. That was one of the things that we found, is that in the same way that in manufacturing we may have smart sensors and devices, at the device and sensor level, those are communicating with control systems. Those may be, producing big data, as you talk about, and now we're using some type of an AI application platform to analyze all that data, and that continuum goes across not just manufacturing, but almost every segment of our environment now, which really creates great. It's another and, right? I can start out with a career in hospitality, maybe deploying smart technology in that area, and find my way to manufacturing, vice versa. Are you seeing some of that as well?
Yeah, definitely. The days of you go to work for a company and you spend 25 years there, which is when I started my career, that's just not the reality. That social contract is very different, and people may start in one area and recognize, hey, there's an opportunity to switch. And I think what I've seen in my own career path is this notion of lifelong learning. What skills are you learning in this job that can help prepare you for the next opportunity? So absolutely, it's very fluid in terms of how that works. I do think there's a dimension to this, though. Just want to touch on that we've been very conscious about. There is the notion of quality, right? And so, okay, I'm going to take a program. How do I know this is a good program, or how do I not know, right? I don't know about you, but when I travel to a new city, I might use Google or some other thing to tell me like what are the restaurant reviews, what are the people saying, right? And I pay attention to that,
Yep,
right?
Absolutely.
So we recognized, how can we as a national institute signal a quality program to people, right? So we created what we call an ARM endorsement program. So we'll actually look at a college or a training. We looked at high school STEM programs.
Sure.
What are you actually teaching? What competencies does someone walk away with at the end? And how do you measure those outcomes, right? So I mentioned Fox Valley because we were in that process with them. But we look at that, and then if it passes the criterion, then we'll put the ARM badge on it. And then so when you're going through those recommendations, you'll see is the badge on it. That signals to me it's quality. Not to say that there are plenty out there that are providing quality, but we want to be very deliberate about helping identify the best of the best that are out there.
So if I'm an institution, a technical college, a community college, university, high school that has an interest in putting that ARM mark on my program, how do I go about doing that?
We want to talk to you.
Yeah, I bet.
So you can come to roboticscareer.org, and there's a place where you can let us know we're interested in getting our program reviewed, so specifically for educators.
And it's a specific audit process, or what should they expect?
It is an audit process. Typically takes 4 to 6 weeks. It culminates in a site review. During COVID, we were certainly doing those on a virtual basis. But we want to see, what are the processes you're employing? How are you actually helping people generate these actual tangible skills? So we're not an accrediting organization, and we're not looking so much at like those dimensions as we are what outcomes are you really generating. If someone takes your program, what are they going to learn? What equipment are they using, and how do you know that they've actually learned that? And that's how so typically a 4 to 6 week process that we go through for folks.
And in the same way then that I look at my 4.5 stars on Google and say I'm probably pretty safe with whatever this purveyor is, you're kind of saying the same thing about those programs.
We'd like to believe that. As a national institute, it's in our interest to promote those programs. And as I said, working with the consortium, we want to be able to surface quality wherever it's possible. And like I said, we've reviewed high school level programs as well as master's level degree based programs.
Sure. And what's the criteria? Are you measuring them against the 26 competencies? Are there other criteria you're looking at?
Absolutely. Those 26 competencies, your graduation rates. How are you equipping people through these programs? Right. So competencies are key, though.
Sure.
You can actually learn these skills.
Absolutely. So great work in terms of figuring out which of these programs kind of pass muster, which of them are meeting those criteria, so that if I'm a student and I'm looking at that particular career pathway, that particular program, I at least have one more set of criteria, one more item to look at and say, this is a quality program, this is the direction I should be going, which I think is really valuable as we look at these just incredible opportunities in the world of manufacturing and in the world of robotics. You're somebody that is working with educators and industrial employers both. You've got to believe, John, you've got a pretty good insight into what the responsibilities of robot technicians are, what that job market looks like. Tell us what's on the market for people going through these programs.
Matt, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's this notion of working with both the employers to understand their needs, but working with the educators and the workforce development groups to say, okay, how do we make sure that what folks are learning is going to map to what industry needs, and vice versa too. Like when we do review a program, if there's feedback we can offer, hey, you didn't pass the audit, but here's what you can do to get to that. That's valuable input, and is driven by an industry-focused view of it.
Absolutely. So get our students excited now. I'm a student. I'm thinking about a career in robotics. What are some of the really cool things that you've seen that these folks are doing once they get into industry?
Yeah, that's a great question. The notion of we just had a young woman come by earlier today, and she was very keen on working on the workforce development side, which typically you hear more on the technology side. But she was very keen on how do we help other people get some skills that maybe they're coming from a non-traditional environment or background. Right? How do I help them make that pathway, right, and get that pathway? So it's very interesting to hear the perspective of how to help make that happen. Then you see folks that are like, wow, how do I deploy robotics in an environment where I'm building drones, or I'm building something that's kind of really cool stuff that's out there.
It's like the double whammy, right? I get to work on robots, and I also get to work on a technology like drones.
Right.
Cool.
So you kind of, like I said, it's a big world. You got to kind of meet people where they are, but ultimately, can we connect them to programs that are going to help them build tangible skills that that are help them become more employable ultimately.
Without question, and I just think it's such an exciting time to be a young person, to be a student, exploring these incredible technologies, and like we were saying here at IMTS this year, one of the things I did in preparation for a presentation I'm doing tomorrow night is actually I'll give them a plug at the Modern Machine Shop Top Shops Expo here at IMTS, and we were looking at all of the different technologies that are on offer here at IMTS this year. For part of that, I was looking at vision systems, so machine vision, camera systems. I know you get into a ton of that. 94 exhibitors here, just with that tag, machine vision systems, believe it or not. We're looking at these technologies that we never saw before, and it's just a really, really exciting time. Go ahead.
I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
So we have a little demonstration project going on. Can you use virtual reality, augmented reality to help validate that an individual has attained certain skills, right? So kind of as a certification process. So we have a demonstration project that's going on right now. I'm a robotics technician. Can I demonstrate that I understand what fluid power and how the PLC needs to be controlled? So, it's a virtual environment, and it's based on real-world equipment. And, as a prospective certification candidate, I go in, I look through that. I have to, check off the various elements to that and demonstrate that I know how to do that. Now, it's not a full-blown certification test today, but it's a proof of how you can start to use this technology to validate, does someone have these skills, or at least enough skills that we feel confident we can put them in an environment where they can start to utilize that.
And I think it speaks to just this huge variety of opportunities and the huge variety of technologies that we're working with in automation. It's a convergence of these technologies, and I think sometimes people from outside of advanced manufacturing look at a 6-axis robot or look at a collaborative robot and say, well, there's a job programming that, there's a job operating that. There are those jobs, but then you start thinking about the control systems that you talk about. You talk about fluid power, mechanical drives, motor control, motion control. I mean, it's just, then you get into some of the extensions of augmented reality, virtual reality. I mean, it's just insane, isn't it?
There's like the iceberg, right? There's
right.
So much behind that's going on, and manufacturing is amazing, man. It is really cool to see how stuff can get built today, and the sophistication of how that can be done, and just the advancement of these technologies, whether it's robotics, AI, automation, additive, just incredible what can be done, and what goes on behind the scenes to enable that, right? And how people can play a role in any part of that dimension.
Exactly, just incredible career opportunities. I want to jump back, John, to something that you touched on a little bit earlier, and that is this whole idea of the workforce side of the workforce development side of robotics and automation. I have the pleasure of serving on the workforce board in our 3-county area in the state of Wisconsin, and see all the great things that are happening in that particular case in the Wow County Workforce Board. We're seeing this huge migration of talent across the economy. We did a podcast earlier this year about it still, and the number still holds true. 1 in 8 working age males between the ages of 25 and 54 are sitting out the workforce right now. They're spending 40 hours plus a week, on screens of some sort. It's fine if you can afford to do that, but as our economy evolves, as their budgets evolve, those people are going to have to find their way back into the workforce, and we're going to see more and more people who maybe worked in hospitality coming into distribution, or people working in retail coming into the world of manufacturing. Talk a little bit more about how you're engaging with some of those workforce folks, whether it's a public service organization, it's a non-governmental organization that's focused on dislocated workers and so on.
Sure.
What can they expect?
So we work with the National Association of Workforce Board, so the parent organization that you
bet.
alluded to. And, their chairman, Ron Painter, is on our advisory committee for how we're working with the workforce. So we pay a lot of attention to this, right? What I've seen with workforce boards in my own experience, each region has its own unique skill sets that it's trying to develop in response to what industry's there, what growth opportunities are there. So being very mindful of that, but it's helped inform how we even think about, this notion of, like I said, RoboticsCareerorg. We didn't just look at degree programs.
Right.
We wanted to know, what's going on at that community college in your neighborhood that can help you prepare for a career path in robotics, automation, AI, right? So very deliberate mindset to say, how are we ensuring that we're providing both this access and guidance to folks, wherever they're coming from, right? So it was a very deliberate initiative and very much informed by, how the workforce boards look at this kind of view of it. We also trying to produce some videos to help promote like manufacturing as a whole. There's a lot going on.
For sure.
Reshoring of jobs and all that, but utilizing these really cool technologies and trying to help people recognize, it's not the manufacturing perhaps of the past, but there's a lot of growth opportunity and career opportunity into the future, and trying to promote that message wherever we can with the various channels that we have access to, I think is the other side of how we try to really help, especially young people, see there's opportunity here.
Huge opportunity. As we look at some of the challenges in the supply chain the last several years, and all of us who work in manufacturing or around manufacturing, no stranger to all those challenges. For a long time, I've had huge respect for the manufacturers, the industrial employers across the country, in large part because I was one of them for so many years. And I think in some ways, maybe that space got a little bit taken for granted. We say when you can get what you want, when you want it, at a price that doesn't seem too out of control, it's really easy to take manufacturing for granted. And now that we haven't had that in so many cases over the course of the last couple of years, people are starting to recognize the huge value that manufacturing brings to the United States. And I think as a result of that, we're going to see more and more manufacturing moving toward the point of consumption. And that it means just nothing but, to your point, amazing career opportunities for people as they consider what the future of advanced manufacturing looks like. And I've seen the tide turn in the last 5 years on the way people are looking at manufacturing careers. Are you seeing the same thing?
Absolutely. Even the reason that our institute exists, we started 5 years ago. Right. We just literally celebrated a 5-year anniversary.
Congratulations.
Thank you. The very notion of how, as a whole, how is the U.S. investing in supporting U.S. manufacturers, the energy that you see going into that, the career opportunities that you see that are really emerging, and yes, in some ways the pandemic and the skills or the shortages in supply chain are helping, I think, raise a greater awareness that, wow, why aren't we looking at how we can build and manufacture here, yes, and even quite frankly, just the broader cultural, how we're being more sustainable, right? I think those are starting to really factor into how, especially younger people, look at this.
Yep.
And how manufacturers can play a role in that, right, and help foster and build on that. And we see that absolutely. It's a great. Just the technology alone. More robots shipping this each quarter. I keep seeing every quarter is more than the next.
Yep.
But behind that is the people, right? How are people utilizing this, leveraging this technology, deploying this technology, and all the facets associated with it.
Manufacturing and industry growing in the U.S. in a more sustainable way and using really awesome technology. I just can't say enough about how quickly the world of manufacturing tech is evolving. As we're sitting here on the dawn of just an amazing week at IMTS, what are some of those technologies that you've seen already in your time here, John, or maybe that you're exciting to see that people should be thinking about?
Well, I would say day one. Been focused on just the student side, so I'm looking forward to getting over to some of the other parts of the show floor, and I've seen some of the equipment that's being installed in preparation. But I really want to see how the robotics is, in particular, since that's our area, is being applied to manufacturing different components. But I also want to understand, what does that mean in terms of what workforce skills do we need to be thinking about, like cybersecurity, for instance.
Sure.
Should we be paying more attention to that? Obviously. But there are other things that are out there that, as the robots and the automation and AI works itself into different kinds of manufacturing context and, different facets of manufacturing, what does that mean for the workforce? That's what I'm really interested in seeing and learning, being here at the show today or this week.
You and I come to IMTS for exactly the same reason, and that is just seeing this amazing technology and understanding how it's going to affect our organization and how we need to evolve and plan for the future. A half hour goes by so incredibly quickly. I've got time for one last question for our guest, John Zappa. And John, it's a question we ask every single guest here on the Tech Ed podcast, and that is, if you had one piece of advice for a high school sophomore, what would that piece of advice be?
Well, that's a layup for me. Go out and use roboticscareerorg. It can help connect you to a career path that might interest you quite a bit in robotics and manufacturing.
And based on what we've heard about it today, exactly that. Understanding what are your competencies, what are your interests, and how do they align with programs all over the country.